What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Wednesday night, July 26, 2023. It's about 10:32 p.m. California time here, and latest activity looks like a 1.3 into Southern California. And now, goodness, you guys may be wondering what's going on here with the Earthquake 3D globe. Why do we have such a pancake of earthquake activity out there? Now, this is rather rare. For a long duration and extreme swarm going on here across the area of the Middle America Trench down here. Now, the USGS map, you would think everything's just fine and dandy, but we have a pretty significant swarm going on here in the Golfo de Fonseca Gulf area. So let's take a look at that. I mean, we really can't see too much on the USGS map, but we know there is a significant earthquake swarm going on here across this area. Now, it looks like the majority of this is occurring relatively shallow. Let me bring up the EMSC model here, and we'll check it out. Back over here to the Middle America Trench. This is definitely something significant, something I haven't seen down here in quite a while. Here's the Golfo the something other down there off the coast of the region of Honduras, right? It's basically right in here between El Salvador and Nicaragua area. This is kind of a triple point area between the countries, but we got goodness, man, I can't even count how many there are in this significant swarm ongoing. We got two separate areas. One here into the Gulf area, into this little bay, and also a little bit further to the plate boundary. Now, stuff like this tells me that there is something much bigger brewing in this area. This is well beyond my, I normally set up a little, a standard far as what I would consider a prelude to a bigger quake. This definitely tops the chart here, so this is something to watch pretty closely. I pulled up some historical data because this is pretty important as far as the historical data goes within this Gulf here, Golfo de Fonseca. Okay, if you look here, the latest activity, it looks like, was back in 2023 this year, just about 10 days or so ago, right? 6.5. 69 kilometers deep. But if you look up here, we've seen some larger quake activity. The last large-scale one was back in 1932, it looks like, here within this little bay area. And we've seen a 6.2 1934, 6.0 back in 1999, 6.0 back in 1982. But regionally around this area of the Middle American Trench, this is about the southern end. That's exactly what I pulled up. We can see some rather large earthquakes here, and I think that's kind of what it's pointing towards right now with this swarm. The last large-scale earthquake, talking about 7.7, occurred within this area back in 2001. Now, this is a major accumulator of stress here. It's a major subduction zone. The slip rate is quite high. Prior to the 2001 event was back in 1992. So, as you can see here, we've definitely seen some large-scale movement here historically within this region where we're seeing this significant earthquake swarm take place here. Basically, it's been in the last 24 hours. You can add a little more quake activity over the last 48, but technically speaking, last 24 hours has been just a full-blown earthquake swarm. And again, it's relatively shallow. Here's the Golfo de Fonseca, Honduras area. Look at the depth there, about 3 kilometers or so. These are not very deep earthquakes whatsoever, and they've been very consistent here with staying relatively shallow for this earthquake swarm. So this is something to watch pretty closely. I think we need to keep an eye on this area for some larger scale movement. That's, when was the last time you seen something like that out here across the Middle America Trench? Yes, we always get quite a few 4s and 5s out here, some 3s, but this is just a bunch of activity. And in fact, the Earthquake 3D globe here, let me bring that back up, is having issues there with keeping up with the timestamp. Because the more earthquakes that are on the globe here, it tends to take away from the time frame of these earthquakes there with the EMSC. So there's, that's just a lot of activity here. So we're going to keep an eye on this pretty closely because I think something is building up towards a larger event here within this area of the Middle America Trench. We do have a 4.0 a little bit further up into the Middle America Trench, up along this area. The USGS not reporting anything across this area, but there's that 4.0 coming in just off the coast of Mexico. Remember, this is a major subduction zone that sits here from about the Nicaragua, Costa Rica area northward into just off the coast here of Mexico. And that's being subducted underneath the region here. You got the Caribbean plate and then a portion of the North American plate up here. This is the Cocos plate, and that's the Middle America Trench right there. Slowly getting rid of this, well, kind of getting rid of some of this land underneath this area where there's quite a few volcanoes and whatnot. But this here is all earthquake activity related, I believe. With this type of movement, including a 3.7 coming in. So this activity is getting larger as we speak. Not for sure. I think I'm going to see if I can't find me a seismograph station down there after this update so we can keep an eye on this, because that's pretty significant, folks, what's going on down there across this this bay region here, the Golfo de Fonseca area. Keep an eye on this here. Something is brewing big time in this region. Let's see what else we got here across the area of the Caribbean plate. Aside from that movement here, things relatively quiet for the most part across the Puerto Rico area. Only a handful of earthquakes on the USGS map here. Into the states, Southern California, a little bit of activity here across the Los Angeles region, it looks like. 1.3, nothing big going on here. A little bit of activity across the Loma Linda area as well. I'm not really seeing any swarming activity. I tell you what, though, if I seen that type of swarming out here around the Salton Sea area where the San Andreas Fault sits, I would be issuing an earthquake warning out here because that would be bad news. Right now, things are very quiet for the most part, aside from some smaller microquake activity there in Southern California. A little bit of movement across the Long Valley supervolcano and the creeping segment here of the San Andreas Fault. Northern California, still watching this activity here across the Bartlett Springs Fault. Although the last earthquake looks like about 8 o'clock this morning. This is a little coast range fault that's been showing some activity. It did have a mid 5-pointer a few years ago that I felt pretty nicely here outside of Chico. The Cascadia subduction zone, one earthquake, a 2.2 near Ferndale. Now, I know we did have something else come in here earlier this evening. I just not really showing it. Either way, the Cascadia subduction zone there showing some movement. Let me check out the tremor map here tonight and see what we have for the Cascadia. Well, that's centered up in Washington right now. 217 epicenters of tremor there into the subduction level of the Cascadia subduction zone. That is applying a little bit of stress out there across the Cascades. It looks like some movement across Mount St. Helens and the rest of the mountain range out there. Looks like mostly smaller microquake activity occurring out there in the last 24 hours. Not a whole lot going on through the rest of the country here. The Alaska, well, let me check Yellowstone. This is something I tend to forget, but I do want to check out Yellowstone, see if we got anything going on here. I don't see any earthquakes swarming, anything like that. Some wind events, maybe some thunderstorm activity earlier. But as far as earthquake activity, relatively quiet there across the region. The Alaska region here, fairly quiet as well. A couple smaller quakes throughout the Aleutian Trench over the last 24 hours. Are getting a little clustering here going on across Japan area, the Japan region. We're noticing quite a bit of deeper movement here. The last one, a 4.8 into the Izu Trench, 354 kilometers deep. It's definitely a deeper quake there. Watch that for some further movement upstream. Also a deeper quake further north into the, that's probably the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench here, 230 kilometers deep for that 4.6. So things are ramping up here across this area of Japan. Noticing some movement here across the sea area, the Japan Basin region. A couple different basins out there showing some surface earthquake activity. Keep an eye on this region as well. I would say the Kuril-Kamchatka is definitely primed for a mega quake. And also check this out here around the Vanuatu area. Goodness, that is quite the swarm of activity. Or would you consider that aftershock activity from that 6.4 this morning? Historically speaking, this area is very capable of producing a much larger earthquake than a 6.4. 6.4 is a very minimal magnitude for this area. So we'll keep an eye on this with this type of swarming going on. It looks like, let me see what the EMSC is reporting here. Quite a few 5s there, and we're also noticing back building up against the Tonga Trench with some deeper movement quakes taking place here in this area. Remember I told you guys to keep an eye on this here a couple days ago? This was our quiet zone. Look how dramatically it fills in. We go from being quiet for a couple days to a bunch of earthquake activity. So we'll watch this region here pretty closely with the shallower earthquake activity across Vanuatu, and then we're getting some deeper back building pressure here that would increase strain within this area. The last one, a 4.4, almost 600 kilometers deep there into the Tonga Trench earlier this evening. New Zealand is showing a little bit of activity. Looks like some 3s kicking up here. USGS not reporting any of that. Let's go ahead and check out the GeoNet servers here real quick as I zoom over to that. Weather, I was looking ahead. We'll talk about the weather here in a little bit. 3.5 South Island area 45 minutes ago. Aside from that, looks like 10 hours ago, 3.5, but we'll go over here to the all magnitudes and see what we got going on. A 1.6 was deleted here within the last hour. There's a 3.5 within about 45 minutes ago, a 4.3 up along the Kermadec Trench. A little bit of activity, noticing a little slight uptick here across New Zealand over the last few hours. I don't think we have anything major blasting off here yet. But goodness, slight uptick here across the North Island, and also within the South Island area, a couple smaller microquakes there. Looks like around Jackson Bay, and yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that for sure. But very active activity going on right now across the globe, at least with the Pacific Plate and adjacent plates here across the Middle America Trench. Java Trench, really nothing showing up here. We did have a 5.2 up into the Philippines area earlier this morning. Looking at the earthquake 3D globe here for the Java Trench, remains quiet. Notice that activity, very absent of movement. And for the most part, fairly minimal activity here across the Mediterranean for now. 4.1 there in eastern Afghanistan, it looks like, from... well, that's a 4.7 there on the USGS map. Hold on a second here. I may have to bring this down a little bit more. There we go. Look at that. There's so many earthquakes happening there in the Middle America Trench that I'm having to adjust the time frame here because the EMSC reports the last 150 or so on the globe. So there's so many earthquakes, it's taken away, it's subtracting the time that is up here. I normally have it set for 24 hours, but I have to set it further back because there's so many earthquakes happening in this earthquake swarm. So there we go. That probably shows a little bit more realistic view there, 4.7 there into the region there around the Caspian Sea from late last night, it looks like. But as far as the Mediterranean, this is our quiet zone for now. I don't know if we're going to see any further activity. The Atlantic Ocean looks pretty quiet. Not a whole lot brewing out here along this area of the world, but I would say, with all the stress going on out here across the Middle America Trench southward, we'll keep an eye on that. That's on some unusual swarming activity there across that region. Not even joking here. That's something brewing pretty sufficiently. All right, the Hawaii area, a couple smaller quakes out there. Let's go ahead and check out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but that's about it. There's really nothing major going on here. A couple smaller quakes there across the Kilauea volcano. I don't believe we've seen any further progression there with the volcanoes. It's been paused since June, mid-June or so. Kilauea update was just put out here yesterday, it looks like. Not erupting. It's been paused since June 19th of this year. No major significant changes have been observed at the summit or in either rift zones over the past week. Looking at sulfur dioxide emissions from the summit remain low. And that's just about it. Just kind of watching that, seeing how it plays out far as potential uptick. We could be entering into a quiet spell across the volcanoes there. Let's see what else we got here, folks. Goodness, it's just I have a feeling something's going to pop up overnight when I'm sleeping. As far as larger scale movement goes, we'll remind me in the morning in the update, right? Well, I'll probably remind myself, but I wouldn't doubt it if we see this thing fill in overnight with some larger scale movement. Definitely think it's possible with that swarm. That's pretty significant. All right, space weather activity here. Looking at a little bit of flaring going on here across regions of the western limb of the sun, and also a couple newer spots coming around the bend. All these newer sunspots and flaring activity will transverse across the surface here, or at least the sun, into our direction, the Earth view direction, and they look somewhat promising far as activity goes. They are currently unnamed. The latest imagery does show a little glimpse of them, and there's a couple different active regions here on the eastern limb of the sun that need monitoring. Remember this sunspot here? Started off as a little baby out here in the eastern limb. That has grown pretty drastically. Although it's not super complex, it still requires a little bit of monitoring there. See if it picks up in complexity. So definitely keep an eye on these sunspots coming around the bend. This region down here does pose a little bit of a threat, but that's currently in a position to where if anything were to happen, it'd be blasting off and away from the Earth view, at least the Earth direction. So we'll watch these here in the coming hours and days ahead. 99% chance for C flare, M flare at 35, X flare around 5% chance. And I don't know if did our G1 storm come to pass? We are expecting a G1 class storm here, UTC time of 18 to 24 on July 27th. So it looks like that got pushed off a little bit until tomorrow. It was scheduled for some time tonight, but I'm not really seeing that show up there. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Either way, there's not a whole lot going on across the polar regions as far as the aurora possibility goes. Looks fairly minimal, folks. Let's see. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on things. Definitely interested in these sunspots and see what happens tonight with this earthquake swarm. You know, it's I'm not for sure if an 8-pointer has struck out here or not. It doesn't show anything. As far as the largest magnitude, shows a 7.7. So that, that's possible. It could be building up here. The last 7-pointer within this bay was back in 1932. So we're coming up on close to 100 years. Holy smokes. And also down south here, we've seen that 7.2, 1921. So there's a lot of older large-scale movement taking place here. And, we could be overdue here across the Middle America Trench for a large, damaging earthquake. So definitely keep an eye on that, folks. We'll see if it fills in overnight. Thunderstorm forecast here for tomorrow. A couple spotty areas, it looks like, across the four corners. Again, getting in on some of that monsoonal moisture. There across Colorado. Colorado always seems the place to be as far as thunderstorm activity goes. Texas, Southern Plains, sorry. You guys are out there in the dry zone. Yeah. Goodness. What do we got for any volcanoes out here across the Cascades? All green. Got a couple volcanoes up along the Aleutian Trench that are currently in the watch level. The Great Sitkin volcano and this one right here that are showing some elevated conditions. But, that's about it as far as the states and territories go out here. We'll continue to watch this overnight, folks. Where was my... well, this is thunderstorm activity, but I was looking into the future here. Somebody's throwing up some fear-mongering about some severe weather. And I'm not talking about, thunderstorms. I'm talking about heat in excess of 120 degrees out here across the Sacramento Valley come the first week of August. Now, I was looking at it. It looks like we do have a heat spell coming up, but it doesn't look like... where's my temperature? Oh, there's a bug on me. Temperature right here. I want to look here into at least Friday there, the 4th in August. Doesn't really show any major heat conditions. It looks like upper 90s. That's actually fairly cool for us. But we'll keep an eye on that. You know, a lot of people throwing up some, you know, some fear mongering, I guess is the word, because of all the, you know, the heat conditions out here in California and across the Southern Plains here recently. So, you know, what better way to fearmonger the YouTube community than throw up 120 degrees expected here in August? We can't really predict August weather yet. That's a ways out there. But I don't see it happening. It looks like some cooler weather taking place out here. Notice this offshore, this green area sitting offshore here of California. That's definitely some cooler temperatures coming in there from the Gulf of Mexico. But either way, we'll continue to watch that, folks. And again, hopefully I'm wrong, but I have a feeling this may fill in overnight as far as some larger scale movement goes. If you know anybody down there, we've got 2.8 coming in again. That's an incredible amount of earthquake activity in a short amount of time. So I'm going to get this update on the channel. I'm going to see if I can't find a seismograph station around that area. A little hard to find, but we'll look here on the map and see if I can't add a station down there. Right now, it doesn't really show anything here on the map as far as seismograph stations, but I can always add the Mexico agency, maybe some Honduras seismology agencies. We'll see what I can come up with. Hopefully. If not, I'll see if I can't find the closest station down here to keep an eye on the movement that's taking place. That's just, you know, a lot of people wondering about this. And by the way, if you're watching on your cell phone, a lot of people do, your iPhone, your Samsung, whatever you use, you can always zoom in on the YouTube screen. So that, of course, the YouTube live stream will look a little bit smaller on your phone, right, compared to the desktop or your TV, whatever you're watching on. So if you want to see these earthquakes a little bit more in detail, just you know, kind of pinch the screen a little bit and spread it out, and it will zoom in on this area so you guys can see where this activity is taking place. Right now, I'm kind of keeping it out a little ways here so everyone can see, you know, obviously the significant swarm that's taking place there. Instead of having it zoomed in, even then you can still see it, but we'll keep it roughly about that size, and we'll see what happens overnight here along the Middle America Trench. Either way, stay safe out there. Make sure you guys have an earthquake plan, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow morning sometime. Have a good night. Peace out.